Okay, let me start mine.
All right.
And it should have started.
All right. Let's see here. Give it a few. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Arknolia and the Doctor with myself, Arknolia Strokebean, and the great YR, I should say there.
Hello. Hey,
Hello there, everybody.
Kansas tonight, huh?
Yeah.
The band Kansas, correct. That's right. So I saw why are we first things first, YR. You heard that I called on Sean's view last night there, late night there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I didn't. You did good. You did better than Prince. He totally sold out. Prince
Wow.
over there, but you did good. You know what I'm saying? No one has issues with anyone calling Sean or whatever. It's just like him not. Obviously he's in the sub only mode and all that. You know what
All
I'm
right
saying?
there. I know, I understand there. I know, that's the only. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about COVID. We talked about politics. We talked about this and that there. And we talked about the poor Prince Donatello leaving YouTube there, which I made a video about there, wishing him the very best. It's sad that he couldn't be with us, but
Right.
you got to respect his wishes. He has a family starting. He has a wife, a daughter that's on the way. He wants to
Sure.
help his mother out. So,
Yeah.
and the last thing you want to do when you're starting a family is bring some sort of drama from this community into his personal community. So
Oh,
that's
Lord, yeah.
understandable.
Yeah.
Absolutely there. And believe me, some of this drama ain't for the meek or ain't for the faint-hearted. That's for sure there.
True.
Yeah, I'm kind of sorry to see him go. He was a good guy.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was very good. I mean, I remember him and Carlos Cabral, who's going to be joining us later on. He mentioned that possibly doing some sort of a wrestling review program there. But the thing is, I mentioned to those guys that I don't really watch wrestling, period, because of my work schedule and my dissatisfaction with Monday Night Raw included.
Yeah, I quit watching about 2 years ago now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I quit watching a long couple of years back actually. I think it was in 2018 because a lot of times I would tune in. It's like the promos and the storylines were similar to the. You remember the cartoon series Super Friends?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like that. I mean, the promo is like, "I'm gonna hit you with my clothesline. Not if I stop you with my sidekick." Boom. That's
Well,
what it's coming to sound like.
I like the AEW. I watch AEW every week. I do watch the
That's
Wednesday show every
yeah,
week. I
that's good.
really do. And then sometimes Fridays, it is late, but I do catch myself watching the whole show
All
Friday.
right,
You know what I'm saying?
good.
So I
I
do
could.
watch AEW. I really do. It is
All
worth it. It is worth your time if you
All
can.
right, all right, there. What about AEW Dark? I understand that's on their official YouTube channel there.
I don't watch that. I think that's kind of like the 205 live of AEW, like their version of 20. You know what I'm saying? It's like because the important stuff's going to be on TV. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely,
Like,
yeah.
but
Or in
if
the
you're like a
highlights.
yeah, if you're a super fan, then they got everyone. They got you cut. Like you can watch wrestling like almost 5 days a week
All
at this
right,
point.
there.
You know what I'm saying?
That's true there. I know. It's like wrestling everywhere. It's like mostly why I usually watch are the wrestling highlights, whether it's from AEW, WWE, Impact, NWA. You know. So that's pretty much it for the topic there. Now let's
Won't
get to
you
the main.
cry no more?
That's right. We're discussing this band here, the band Kansas. Formed in, of course, the state of Kansas there, and of
yeah,
course,
and they were around and released lots of albums before Leftoverture, but we'll
absolutely,
get to all of that.
absolutely, we're going to go over their whole album. We're going to go throughout their whole albums in general. There, bottom
Yes.
line there, because they released a lot more than just the ones that we know, like Point of No Return, Leftoverture, Monolith. We got to definitely talk about the cover of that album there. That's a pretty interesting one there.
Yeah. Well, like you say, the band started in Kansas, and they did a lot of band jumping, group jumping, member jumping, whatever, before they
Hmm.
settled. Uh, they started out as Kansas in 1970. They merged
Hmm.
with members of another band there in Topeka called White Clover.
Yep.
And after a little while, they changed their name to something called Protocol,
Mm.
and actually released some demos, which you can find those if you look hard enough. And they had some of the members of Kansas, but a lot of the people were people we don't know who they are.
Yeah.
But then when they finally got around to putting the other people in the group, they started out. Well, when they got their contract signed, they decided, you know what, let's change our name back to Kansas.
Yeah.
So they changed the name back to Kansas and
Yeah.
became for the most part, the Kansas we know and love.
Absolutely. And for the record, they signed on with the CBS division label that's kind of distributed by CBS Records called Kirshner Records. That was founded by Don Kirshner, who did these musical supervision for the Monkees TV series, and also the man behind the Midnight Special program that aired late nights on the weekends on NBC.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the debut album was in 1974, and this had a lot of tracks on it that were worth listening to.
Oh, yeah.
It started off with Can I Tell You, which is a great little song. And then they did Bringing It Back, which there's a story behind that and about them bringing stuff back from Mexico.
Ah,
And we'll just kind of leave it at that.
all right. I know what you mean.
And then the next one is something called Lonely Wind, which is a great little song. Another one.
What year? What year is that on?
1974.
Yep.
Oh God.
Self-titled. You'll recognize the man on the front cover there. It's a painting of a man, white-haired, bearded man there with I guess his arms are out wide and he's shouting something there, and he's got something in his hand, both his hands, if I'm correct there.
Yeah, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is supposed to be, God, what's the guy's name? The abolitionist.
John Brown.
Yeah, that's him.
John Brown. Yeah,
I think that's who it's supposed to be.
I see there. Yeah.
They also did another song on this album called Journey from Maribyrnong, which is a great little song. Well, little, it's fairly long. 7 minutes. But that's the mark of a prog band. You're going to do 7, 9, 10, 12-minute songs.
That's what I was just about to. I was just about to ask you. Would you consider Kansas a progressive rock band?
Oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
At the start for a long time, yeah. I mean,
Were they like the ones that maybe pioneered it, maybe, or
No,
like
that title belongs to bands like Yes, King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, because they were started around the 1960s. Yeah.
Now, Kansas was the first American prog band.
Mm-hmm. And we also cannot forget the crazy world of Arthur Brown from the 60s as well, because he was like a more darker progressive rock when you think about it.
Yeah, he was kind of prog before prog was a thing.
Yeah. And the theatrics, when you see his old theatrics, it makes you wonder, wow, did this man influence Marilyn Manson?
Yeah, yeah. There's another song on this album called Death of Mother Nature Suite that's about 7 minutes long.
Nice.
That's also a really good song to listen to. And like I said, that's a pretty good mark of a prog band is if you got a lot of long songs.
Yep.
Now they followed this up with Song for America in 1975, which is probably the best non-hit song. One of the best non-hit songs was Song for America.
Yeah.
Which was 10 minutes long.
Mm.
But it's a really, really good song.
Yeah. And that's what this album would debut the official Kansas logo that we know today.
Yeah. And they also had a song on there called Lamplight Symphony, which is about 8 minutes long, which that song is definitely worth a listen to. It's pretty much the story of an old guy that's looking back and he sees the grave of his wife and wishes, to join her or whatever. And she comes and sees him in his dream or in his reveries, you might say. And it's basically, it's a good song. And when you listen to the lyrics, you're gonna be touched. I mean, you really are.
It's touching song for anybody out there who's lost a loved one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then they got another one on there called Down the Road that's good. Lonely Street, The Devil Game.
Yep.
And then in Conundro, Hymn to the Atman. That song's 12 minutes long.
Damn. Interesting.
Good song.
Interesting there.
And
And the one that came after the same year was called Mask. Masque.
Yeah. And this, like I said, their first three albums, even though they're not as well known, have some outstanding tracks.
Mhm.
And this one's got, I think this is the one with, Icarus, Born on the Wings of Steel.
Uh-huh.
That song is a great story. And
All
that's
right.
another mark of prog bands, if the songs tell a story.
Yep.
But it's basically about, if you've read any kind of Greek mythology, it's about the guy that was named Icarus, and
Yes.
he was trapped on an island or banished to an island, and essentially he fashioned wings for him and his son to get off the island.
Well, made of wax.
Yeah, well, and also they did have feathers in it.
Yep,
But
so
yeah,
to fly
and-
off the island. And I know the rest of the story. They were told not to fly too close to the sun, but unfortunately, one disobeyed, and next thing you know, boom, down they fall. And we know
Right.
another well-known, respected heavy metal song with the same theme, Flight of Icarus by Iron Maiden.
yeah. And then you got Mysteries and
Love that
Mayhem
song.
on this album. That's good.
And The Pinnacle, which is the closing track here.
Yeah, 9 minutes long.
Now, keep in mind, this is probably one of the first prog. Was Kansas the first prog rock band to feature a violinist? Well, what am I
I'm
talking
pretty sure
about?
of that.
Well,
I don't
because I'm
know
just
that.
reminded now, because I remembered King Crimson back in around 73 debuted their violin player, David Cross, on the
Right.
Lark's Tongues for Aspect lineup there. And he would remain up to their first breakup in 74 there. And of course, the violin player, Robbie Earnhardt, I think that's his name was.
Yeah, Robbie
if I'm
Earnhardt.
correct. Yes, who so unfortunately passed away. Not too sure what year it was, but
It was within the last year.
oh wow, yeah. And he was also, I guess he also was a co-vocalist with the band a couple times there, because I remember there was the MTV Saturday Night Concert where they had not Steve Walsh but John Elephant as their frontman, and he was sharing vocals with the singer there on a couple of tracks there.
Yeah,
And if notice
Robbie
that the
was
other
his
one that-
co-vocalist.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, let's not forget, when that change came about, which we'll discuss later on, Kenny Levine, if I remember his last name
Levine,
being
yeah.
pronounced, Levine, he had to also share keyboards and guitar because Steve Walsh
Was the keyboard player.
did most of the keyboards. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
The
it's-
next album
so-
was the big one. 1976, Leftover.
Leftover, yeah. And we know the first track from that album, like the back of our hands, Carry On Wayward Son. Still played on the radios to this day on classic rock stations all across the country.
Yeah.
And also includes that track you mentioned, Miracles Out of Nowhere.
Right. The
Yeah.
Wall.
And also, that's the name, yep, The Wall, not the Pink Floyd Wall, obviously. What's on My Mind, Opus Insert, Questions on My Childhood, Cheyenne Anthem, and a Magnum Opus. And by
And
the
the
way,
mag-
there was a documentary on the early years of Kansas up to about when they first made it big, detailing the whole situation there. It was called Miracles Out of Nowhere. I saw on the VH1 Classic there. And here's a little interesting story. They were opening for Aerosmith, and I guess Steven Tyler was getting rambunctious. He wanted them to leave the stage, I guess. But I guess what they did is they shut up the power so Kansas would be stopped playing, but they kept playing on, I guess, which enraged Steven Tyler even more.
Wow.
Remember, a lot of rock stars back then often do have big ass egos.
Yeah, there's a couple notables in that respect.
Oh yeah,
Steven Tyler's one of them. The Guns N'
yep.
Roses guy's another.
Axl Rose.
Yeah, I couldn't think of his name for some reason.
Oh yeah.
And there were other prima donnas, but I can't think of them off the top of my head.
Yeah. I
I
know.
Brian, I do. Whenever we are done with this, we do need to dive into the news of David Lee Roth saying he's retiring. Did you get
Yeah, I
that
heard
news?
about that.
Yeah.
I heard about that as well. Well, obviously, I I guess his time was done.
It's either that or he has some type of illness, or maybe it's some type of back problems. Or because if you read what he wrote, he's like he thought he would be the first to go before Eddie, and so it might be might be something like that. But if not, it could be it's for real. Because I mean, no band really does stop touring. Like everyone, you know what I'm saying, comes back and
true,
they
yeah.
say that,
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
Steve Walsh left Journey because of, not Steve Walsh, Steve Perry
Steve Perry.
left Journey because of back problems.
Yeah.
And
They replaced him, and actually, he didn't really leave. He actually had to step back from your band because he had hip surgery. I understand that he had issues with, and then
everyone's wanting this tribute, like this big Eddie Van Halen tribute, because it's Wednesdays, it's the year anniversaries of his death.
wow,
this
that's
Wednesday.
wow.
So, why is David Roth retiring? Why can't he do this? One last thing, maybe have Alex on there and drums, and maybe have maybe like a
Michael
John
Anthony.
Five, John
Yeah.
Five for the guitar, Steve obviously Michael Anthony for the bass. Maybe like
Yeah.
a John Five, Steve Vai for the guitar, someone really, really,
well,
Yeah.
you're going to see, if it hadn't already been done, a
Or
tribute
son.
album with various artists.
Oh yeah.
for
Most likely, yeah.
for Van Halen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll be good.
absolutely. We
because
see
they've
a whole
done it for
bunch
a lot
them.
of other bands, and I'm sure they'll do it for Eddie.
Absolutely, they will.
But anyway, go back to the list. My bad. I just wanted to
It's okay.
mention that
Oh,
it's
no
before I
problem.
forget.
No
Next
problem at
up
all.
was another big one, 1977, Point of No Return.
Oh yeah, that's the one with the ultra classic "Dust in the Wind." Had
Oh,
the
yeah.
title cut there. Yes,
If
in
anybody's
the
ever
Wind.
heard of Kansas, they've definitely heard that song.
absolutely, because that's one of the big ones right there. That was one of the big albums that they ever came out with. "Dust in the Wind" was probably played on the radio multiple times on almost every station, whether it's hard rock, soft rock,
Yeah.
and I believe it was even featured on an episode of Highlander the series back in the '90s, if I remember.
That's
Yes,
something
I
about
did.
Kansas. It's like they're the type that, like you said, would be on, because there are soft rock stations, and there is classic rock stations, and there is
Yep.
the mix radio, mix stations. There is,
Right.
so you hear Kansas on. I mean, I don't even like, what are the oldies play now? Are they playing 70s stuff, oldie stations at this point?
Well, I don't know.
80s is like 40 years old. That should be old.
I know. It's like
Yeah,
geez,
it's
like,
really weird because you sit there and, for me, oldies is 50s and 60s.
right.
yeah, I
That
know.
stuff
Same
never
here.
gets played anymore.
The Turtles, the Box Tops.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, the stuff from the Stones, the Beatles, even the Monkees. A couple points there, but now we have moved so forward. Now it's Motley Crue. I consider classic rock.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I still consider. I mean, what did you consider 80s stuff, like 80s rock in the 2000s? What did you consider? Because that was only 20 years ago from the 2000s. Now look at now; it's 40 years ago.
I know exactly,
Right?
man. Well, we all know they often call 80s rock, hair metal or 80s rock. Well, it's not just hair, but then again, it was, because
Like a
back then it was
glam rock or
glam
arena
metal,
rock,
glam
arena
rock,
you know?
yeah,
Power
bands like
rock,
Faster,
you know?
yep, Faster Pussycat, that was glam rock, that was glam metal at its best,
Poison.
Poison, that absolutely, they were the big ones there.
Yes.
Yeah, and you
Absolute-
also saw the rise of some of the, what do they call it, alternative rock or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely, alternative rock. bands like White Zombie, which was considered alternative metal at that point.
Well, I was thinking more of things like Dexy's Midnight Runner. Let's see who else. Cyndi Lauper, things of that nature. You
When
know,
it
they
comes
were
to
doing that in
80s,
the 80s.
yeah. And some of that stuff, well, that mostly stuff there usually nowadays gets played on, if they still do, they usually get played on the soft rock stuff time and now and then. I remember there was a soft rock station would play either Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper, along with some ditzy song by Sheryl Crow, and then
Yeah,
probably will play something later on. But sadly, like everything else, things have changed. Playlists have moved on. They don't play Jim Croce no more. They often play stuff like Imagine Dragons,
right.
some of the current stuff.
Yeah. But back to Kansas.
Yep,
That album had Point of No Return, which was a big one.
yep.
Paradox, and then the Spider. Then it did a song called Portrait He Knew, which is essentially the story of, as I gather, of Thomas Edison.
Oh wow, interesting there. I guess the guy considered the father of electricity. Though, however, this was years before we found about
No, I'm
Nikola
sorry,
Tesla.
not Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein.
Oh, okay, there. I see there.
You know, because it says he knew
Yep,
more than me or you.
yep, absolutely.
And then the next song is something called Closet Chronicles, which is actually a
Mm.
very good song. And if
All
you
right.
listen to it, I pick up that it's the story of who was the recluse from the 50s and 60s?
Um,
Howard
Howard
Hughes.
Hughes?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
The
essentially the
billionaire
story of
recluse.
him.
Mm.
Again, they tell stories.
I am, absolutely.
And then you had Lightning's Hand, which was good. Sparks of the Tempest.
Hmm.
Nobody's Home. And Hopelessly Human.
Ah,
That, this band put out some great songs.
yeah.
And they followed that up with Monolith.
Yeah, an
And you want
interesting,
to talk about the
an
cover?
interest. Yeah, the cover, if you notice there, which came out in 1979, uh, it was basically a bunch of Native Americans wearing spacesuits with those little helmets, little seat glass helmets on there, like a spacesuit or something like that.
Right.
And basically it depicts the destruction of the modern world. The Gay Folk album, you see the highways, dismantled. Everything's destroyed here and there. I mean, you see a big close up of the moon, so close to the earth
Yes.
there. Yes, and it was like it's kind of frightening when you look at it because you wonder, are we
Mm.
going to be heading towards that period in the
Have you
near
ever seen?
future?
Have you ever seen the moon, Doctor Brown? Or
Not up close, far away from where we
Really?
usually see it there. Yes, it would be nice to see it up closer, but I have to be in
oh
a
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe with a telescope, I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
be there.
that's true. Yeah, but the thing, yeah, I don't think we have a telescope at our place. Unfortunately,
Well,
there.
I know we plot a spot, and it's closer than y'all think. That you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You really get to see the moon really good.
Yeah. Let me guess, NASA.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
mission control, brother. You know?
yeah. I am. It was kind of funny. We passed by the NASA space station on our way to Galveston for that vacation a couple years back there. Sometimes I like to go visit that space place sometime soon there to check out all the telescopes and everything else there. That's simply to let us in because you know how heavily guarded that joint
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. There was some good stuff on this album, too. People of the
Yeah.
Southwind.
Yeah, that was the first single from that album there.
Yeah.
And I guess the way they did it was that they were performing the Monolith album in its entirety, along with their other songs there. Songs like "Angels Have Fallen on the Other Side," "How My
Yeah.
Soul Cries Out for You," and of course "Stay Out of Trouble," "Reason to Be," the closing track there. There were a couple of videos made for this here, "Reason to Be," and of course "People of the South Wind" as well. And I guess for the "Reason to Be," it featured a man kind of like similar to the man on the front cover of that album, but instead of Native American with the glass bowl over his head there in the spacesuit. It kind of like had a I don't know what kind of design was. It's something in its place there, but it is kind of interesting to see. Now they decided to stop performing that album in its entirety when they realized people didn't really like the album that much there. So they just went back to their usual set list there, if I understand.
Yeah, it's funny because in its own way it's a good album, but it just
Yeah, it
didn't
is.
measure up to Leftoverture or Point of No
Or
Return.
I know, because I guess people were expecting another Dust in the Wind or another hit single from that album there, but it's hard to recuperate. It's hard to reduplicate those kind of songs there. And if they were tried to do that, they would be the laughing stock. It would have been way over for them.
And they
And
followed
with
that up with
Audio
Audio
Vision,
Visions.
yes, and the song "Hold On" that was played a lot on rock radio around that year, 1980.
Yeah,
And this would be the last album to feature Steve Walsh as a frontman and keyboardist. Apparently,
yeah,
what it was, I guess he were at a rehearsal, and I guess he came in and announced it that, I cannot do this no more, and that was it, if I understand it there. And they
yeah. They
replaced
kind of
him with,
changed their way a little bit.
yeah, and I guess Steve Walsh would later put together a band called Streets a couple years later. They released their first album titled First. I remember the hit song from that album was called If Love Should Go. That was played on the radio for a while there. They later released the second record called Crimes in Mind, and then they disappeared. Of
Yeah,
course, a year later, Steve Walsh will rejoin Kansas for the album Power, which we will get to later on.
yeah, yeah. This album was kind of a departure from what they were doing,
Yeah,
but it was still in and of itself not a horrible album.
yeah, yeah, it was.
And then they followed it up with Vinyl Confessions, which was the first one with the new guy.
Yeah, John Elefante. Play the Game Tonight was a massive hit on MTV and on the radio.
Yeah,
So they
this
were definitely back.
yeah, and they basically at this point didn't abandon Prog, but it wasn't as big a deal for them as it was before.
It kind of mixed the prog roots and with the new stuff that they were coming up with there. It was a mix of both.
Yeah, they kind of dabbled in top 40, but didn't at least didn't go all the way into it like Genesis did.
Yeah, absolutely there.
It's kind of like, well, let's get a single out and satisfy the record company.
Yep.
Is
Which
basically
they did, and which they did, because as we mentioned, Play the Game Tonight was a massive big hit on both radio and MTV.
yeah, and they followed that up with Drastic Measures, which
Yeah, which which is kind of funny. It has kind of funny cover to it because first beforehand, Kansas was now a five-piece. Robbie Reinhardt, he decided to leave the group there. And this is when they decided to drastically change their sound
yeah,
with this album.
Fight
In
Fire with
fact,
Fire.
and the song, the follow-up song, "Everybody's My Friend," which is the follow-up single there, that was about John Elefante finding out how many friends he didn't know he had. People recognize him. Hey, I remember you from this. I remember you that. And like, really? I don't think I even met there.
Yeah, it's
Those kind of
funny
people.
when you get to certain stages in your life, like you either suddenly get rich or whatever, or
Yep.
you're suddenly famous. All
Yep.
these people that you didn't know knew you, which they didn't,
Absolutely.
suddenly know you, and
Tried
they're your best
hangers
buddy.
on. Hangers on. That's what we call those people. They're trying to boost their ego by getting with this individual here, try to boost their esteem there, which doesn't always work. You know,
Right.
'Cause, yeah, how many? I'm not. I remember the guy from Green Day talked about that one time. He's like, "No, you're not my friend. We never knew each other. Get over it."
The next album was Power.
Yes, and Kansas was pretty much done between those. Well, not necessarily done. They just took a breather there. Kenny Irving decided who became a born again Christian, by the way. he released an album, I guess. I forgot it was called Lifetime or Lifeline there,
Yeah,
which
wasn't
apparently,
he won pretty much during the early years of the band too?
yes, he was. So from the start up till about this point there.
That's what I
And he was
thought.
all, yeah, he was the man who, by the way, wrote Dust in the Wind. Barely what it was a guitar finger picking practice for the guitar there. And his wife decided and said, hey, make that into a song.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Then
of
they
course,
followed.
Hold on a second. By this time, it was basically got Phil Ehart, their drummer, back, a new bass player, and I guess they got a new guitarist, Steve Morse.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
Steve
and
Morris went on to do bigger and better things.
yeah, he's currently the guitarist for Deep Purple. And of course, Rich Williams, the guy who in the back of the day used to wear a tuxedo on stage in some of their promo videos, he was wearing basically regular clothing at this point and sporting an eye patch. I
Yeah.
remember seeing that. It's like, holy cow, did something happen to him? Well, turns out when he was a kid, he lost one of his eyes in a firecracker accident there. And throughout the earlier years, he had to wear a prosthetic eye.
Wow.
When Kansas came back in '86 with this album, he had decided to abandon the prosthetic eye and just wear an eye patch. And he still does that to this very day.
Yeah, I saw Kansas shortly after Walsh rejoined the group. Uh, I don't know how familiar you are with the Dallas Fort Worth area, but
Um, Never been there.
we had a place that bands used to play called the Starplex out
Ah,
near the State Fair.
Is that where they did the wrestling?
No, that was the Sportatorium.
Okay, okay.
But that place used to feature band. I saw many a concert at that particular venue.
all right.
That's a bad part of town nowadays, right? Over there by the
Oh yeah,
ferry.
you wouldn't want to. No, you wouldn't want to be there. You know, it's where the old Cotton Bowl used to be too.
I see there. Yeah.
The
But
Rolling Stones play there at the Cotton Bowl.
yeah,
Mhm.
and the Cotton Bowl featured some bands too. I never saw any at the Cotton Bowl, but at the Starplex I saw Kansas, and I saw oh gosh, the Moody Blues twice,
Ah, nice.
and they had a concert right after 9/11 that a bunch of bands got together as a fundraiser. That must have
Hmm.
been 15 or 20 of them, and they'd
Hmm.
each come out and do two songs apiece or whatever. And they only did two of those shows, from what I gathered, but we got one of them.
Wow. Wow. Interesting.
You know, it had groups like Grand Funk, REO Speedwagon,
Hmm.
Blue Oyster Cult.
Yep.
I need to see the list one of these days because there was a ton of bands at that thing,
Wow.
and I enjoyed the heck out of that. You
Kind of
know, even
reminds
though
me of
that
that.
one of them would come out and play two, three songs, they'd leave. Another one would come out and play two, three songs, they'd leave. Another, it was a lot of that all night, but it
I
was
see. Kind of
still,
like now. Did it? What was the band? Was it just the same equipment, same drum kit and stuff, and just the bands with their guitars and stuff, or
well,
was it
some of them
kind of
would
like
change
that?
out a little bit, but it wouldn't be anything long and involved, like 45 minutes like some of them used to take, but
Because
it,
I
it was,
remember during the first Live Aid back in 1985, while band was playing up there, crew was setting up the equipment for the other band that was going to play right afterwards. It was like one band into for another there.
yeah, we used to have a lot of venues around this area.
Wow.
They used to have one that was, the old joke about bowling alleys. That
Correct.
was actually a pretty good venue. I saw Robin Trower there,
I remember. Yeah, you mentioned that there. Yes.
and of course the American Airlines Arena or whatever it's called has had some killer concerts.
That's
I
good.
saw the Who there, Black Sabbath,
Nice.
two or three other, Eric Clapton.
Nice.
Great, great venue, and then of course Fort Worth had a couple of them. So, But yeah, the one you mentioned earlier there, why was the Sportatorium,
Yes.
and it was definitely not a venue for bands. But it's gone. It got torn down several years back. But one of these days, when we get into the history of wrestling, that place had some absolutely phenomenal people come through and wrestled here. I mean, the Dallas Fort Worth was a hotbed for a long time
Ah,
for a lot of the big ones.
wow.
But back to Kansas.
Hmm.
Next album was In the Spirit of Things.
From '88, and an interesting cover there. I guess so. I understand. There was a lot of hauntings at the studio that they were recording in. A lot of spirits there, ghosts and the such.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Then they actually followed that up 7 years later with Freaks of Nature.
Ah, interesting cover there for that one there.
Yeah, yeah.
And the
They
track.
they were kind of doing a long time between albums here for a while.
Yeah.
And the next one was Always Never the Same,
From
which is kind of a
1998.
yeah, which is kind of a strange title.
Yeah. And I guess this was this a live album or a remake album? Because a lot of songs they remade "Dust in the Wind," "Song for America," "Miracles Out of Nowhere," "Hold On," "Sky's Falling," and their version of Eleanor Rigby.
Yeah, I don't honestly don't. I think it is live, but I'm not sure. It's been
Let
a
me
long
look it
time
up for
since
you.
I heard that album.
Always, never the same. Studio album by Kansas. It says it's going to look it up right now. It's good. It should be coming up here. If the Wi-Fi, okay, it's a studio album. It's the 13th studio from them, and it's mostly covers of the band's previous work, re-recorded with the London Symphony Orchestra. New
Yeah,
songs include "In Your Eyes," "The Sky's Falling," "Need to Know," and of course their cover of "Eleanor Rigby" by the Carlos. He's calling right now, but I have to add him to the call there later on when he's done calling there because you know how my Skype is.
yeah. Next album was Somewhere to Elsewhere in 2000,
Yep.
and they
Go
followed
ahead.
that with the Prelude Implicit in 2016.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's about 5 years in between there.
That's 16 years.
16 years. Wow. And
Who's trying to
2000.
call you? Who's trying to call?
It was Carlos Cabral.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm going to add him right now. I'm going to add him as soon as he got because every time I add somebody to the call, it puts you guys on hold, and that always pees me
You
off.
know how Minnesota is. I thought he was calling you, trying to, put him in
And
everything.
I'm done with him for the time being. I'm
Oh,
done
for
with
real?
him. Well, no,
Minnesota?
I'm mad. I'm mad at him. We discussed
Did
how
you see what
much.
he happened on? Did you see what he did this past weekend with Ken shit?
No, I have. Well, I know that. I think I saw some of that. I know. I know.
I mean,
Mr.
not to dive too much. Like basically, there was a situation. Ken, there was like emergency situation type deal.
Yeah.
Like a family, stuff, personal stuff, and like
Yeah.
Nikki Nines and Dave Rose are trying to like talk over it and cover the show, but then like
Yep.
Minnesota was in the chat like, "Hey, everyone, be quiet so we can hear." Like, bro, he was, there's levels to this, is what Nikki said. So
Yep.
Minnesota really crossed the line this past weekend, and it
Yeah, I
sounds,
see. I remember what I was remember saying. Minnesota was like, fuckface. I don't know if he was talking to Dave or mostly Nicky Nine, so I understand there. But I guess you know how Minnesota is.
yeah,
I mean, and we also I also mentioned last time how he basically does what he said. I'm unsubbed to your channel. I won't be doing shows with you no more. Blah blah blah, and all that bullshit there. So I said I'm just gonna let it go for the time being. Let him do his thing there. But it's gonna be replays of various clips from this show, that show. Give me a break.
Yeah, I I don't know. I try to stay out of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, but
no, we can
you
move on.
can't.
I was just saying his name came up. It's all right. Let's move on.
All right,
I was
there.
just,
Yeah, no, that's okay. And then the last album they did was in 2020,
Yeah. During the pandemic, I guess it was called "The Absence of Presence."
which is
Hey
another one
guys,
of
how you been?
Carlos
What's
Cabral,
up,
how's
Carlos,
it going?
brother?
How you doing there? What's up, dude?
I'm doing great, man. I had to take care of grocery shopping, but I'm here
That's
now.
understand. Understand now. How you doing, man? Everything going good? You know.
I'm doing great. Just I did a live helping somebody out with a news report
All
on my
right.
channel, and
Nice.
then I did some grocery shopping and busy with work, but I'm here. I definitely want to talk about this hot topic, Dog the Bounty Hunter catching the victim's
Looking.
fiance.
Yeah, we own. Yeah,
Okay,
Brian Laundry.
we'll
Well,
get out
what
of
happened?
that in a little bit. Let's finish up with Kansas real quick.
All right, there.
You got
Been
it.
here,
Which actually we can't technically have. We just mentioned their last album. They did
Yep.
have some live. Two for the Show is an
Yep.
excellent live album.
Absolutely. And he did another live album with From the Whiskey a Go Go.
Right.
I guess it was in the 90s there. And of course, the Kansas lineup now is kind of different because, Steve Walsh and Bobby Reinhardt Robbie Reinhardt is no longer with us there. So I guess it's a whole new lineup, I guess you could
It's
say
pretty
there with
much-
some of the original.
I don't
Which
know if
kind of
they have
bummed-
any originals.
I don't know. I got to find out the current lineup and members with the compare them to the old to the new there to find out for sure there.
Well, hang on a minute. I'll look up the absence of presence, see who's in the band at that point.
All right there.
Lonnie Platt, new guy. Rich Williams, he's been around.
Still there. The man I mentioned with the eye patch and the tuxedo.
Then Zach Rizell, who I'm not familiar with. Tom Brislin,
Tom Grislin.
David Ragsdale,
David Dragsdale.
Billy Greer, and
Never
Phil
heard of him.
Ehart. So basically, it's
Good
Ehart
drummer.
and Williams.
Oh, wow. That's interesting there. It was two original members with a whole new lineup there. And what the heck is going on, dude? Carlos, what's going on, dude?
Somebody's eating their
Doing
mic.
great. Doing great.
What's that noise? Is that you?
Somebody's eating their mic.
Oh, sorry. Let me mute
It's
my mic,
okay.
gentlemen. Sorry.
It's okay, dude.
Oh, we're almost done anyway. That pretty much covers Kansas. But I will suggest if you want to get a great live album, Two for the Show is definitely worth listening to.
Oh, yeah, it's
They
from
play through
1980
a
as
lot
well.
of their big stuff from their first 5 albums.
All right. All right, there. Okay. There you are, Carlos. So, you want to talk about Dog the Bounty Hunter going after Brian Laundry, right?
That
Yeah, because I know you've been interested on that topic. It was announced, of course, a couple weeks back that Dwayne Dog Chapman, TV's Dog the Bounty Hunter,